Hello, everyone, to another Hangout. And this week so far, or this 2 weeks or whatever, we're sort of doing these unofficially bi-weekly. But it's me, Charles, and Jacob showing up. And just before, while we were getting everything up, Charles, you were telling us how you're looking forward to Jurassic World?
Yes, I'm going to see this with my dad, who's going to be a great. I can't wait to see it, even though the dinosaurs look not like birds, but the regular dinosaurs you saw, like, a couple, like 30 or some years ago, which everyone thought they looked like, but now we don't. We know that they don't look like that, so I can't wait to see that.
Well, I mean, even 30 years ago, Archaeopteryx we knew about since, like, what, the late 19th century, so I guess they just kind of wimped out in the first movie. But yeah, we have discovered a lot since then, like about how much feathers they had and how colorful they were and everything. But I guess they
Yeah,
were just going with what most people's mental idea of a dinosaur looks like.
Plus, they are being
yeah,
spliced with frogs, so that might have something to do with it.
yeah, that's the thing too. Which, by the way, I have no idea why they didn't do this or anything in the human applications of this yet. Like, shouldn't that be like, saving like diseases or all this type of things instead of just, oh, let's make dinosaurs. Like,
No, it's a movie. You have to enjoy the movie.
I know, but again, I do enjoy it. I
And the
really did
movie
love.
was all about, I didn't see the others, the first one was bad enough for me, but the first movie was all about how horrible it is to do science things that play around with nature like you're playing God type of thing.
Which it's funny because even though again, I'm the only Christian here, but I do see that problem with that same plot point over and over and over again. Because I'm like, yes, we get it. Mankind is, we can't tamper in this God's domain and such. Like, no, honestly, I get sick of that because you know what? I love Star Trek, and they tamper with everything in God's domain for the most part, and they actually come really close to that. Sure, heck, yeah, Ben Sisko actually a
They even
message
meet
from
God in one movie,
yeah, technically, or was it? I don't
kind
know.
of.
Yeah, they killed God because God wanted their starship and they didn't want to give it up, so they
I
killed
think it
God.
was supposed to
Why
be a
does God
demon.
need a starship?
Yes.
The only good line from that movie, the only good part about 5, what
Yes.
does God need with the starship? Which,
The
I'm
fact that,
sorry, was a McCoy line. That should have been a McCoy line,
yeah.
not a Kirk.
By the
I guess.
way, you take any of y'all or anyone who's watching heard of the internet reviewer SF Debris because he actually does a ton of good Star Trek reviews. He's really good. Um, and the funny thing is, probably one of his best is Star Trek Insurrection. I think it's the part two of his movie review, and he goes off on a completely justified rant about how the entire movie's premise just falls flat in its face, saying that, if you remember that movie, you had the Baku, basically on this
The
planet.
next two movies kind of muddled together in my head, and I can't remember which one's which. They were all just that bad.
Uh,
Basically,
uh,
thank you for saying this. We hate technology and helping people with, what was that? Some kind of immortality
yeah, I think that could
comments?
help medical technology that could help over 800 million sentient life forms, all this type of stuff. And they were in the middle of the what was it, the Dominion War, when they were losing, that they needed that type of technology. And for some reason, which I have no idea why, they didn't go through with it because the Baku had some hot white woman. That's pretty much the whole.
Yes,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah.
I must
Yeah.
have excised it from my memory because I remember none of that.
Don't worry, it's
Oh,
not worth it.
yeah. And I
I
love
did.
the fact that Netflix, they have this, it's like it's a cerebral movie. I'm like, are you kidding me? I was like, I remember watching this and I was like, no. I remember watching this when I was a kid. I was like, wait a minute. If they asked them directly, didn't, just say, hey, why do you have to do all this secret stuff? Why don't you just say, hey, we need this thing to help save lives on a huge, gigantic scale? And that's it. The actually bring up this point saying, government, what they were trying to pull out, saying, oh, you're doing the same thing what the Indians did, back in the day, like Picard was arguing for. This is the same thing what the Indians, the Americans did to the Indians. But the funny thing is that in early seasons, of Next Generation, he actually force relocated aliens that looked like Native Americans. So that was funny on that part. But He's like, and I'm like, really? Where was? And he goes off on tangents of like other PowerPoints saying, against like, where were you when the Marquis was, when the Marquis, that whole revenge thing on start during Next Generation, including the Voyager. Where were you when this whole thing started? You could have helped them out. And what was your response? No, we keep the peace treaty with the Kardashians, which was, well, basically destroying and you know, destroying, Federation settlements or something. People were inside the demilitarized zones, treating them horribly. No, we just keep a peace treaty that won't do anything to help the peace at all. And the fact that, again, we're in the middle of a wartime, could you imagine right here, like you guys, what have you? You live in a place that has around there. You can have the cure for cancer, the cure for all cancer, like living like around your area, like the trees would have you. And you're not, and the government sees this and says this will cure cancer. This will do anything else. We have to cure, like have intimate domain or what have you, and this will help save millions of lives. Would you say yes? Would you say no? Most people will say, yeah, sure, go ahead. Just compensate me, whatever. Just this will help save billions of lives.
Man, if I had trees that cured cancer, could I just sell it to some big pharmaceutical company and make more money off of it?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's true.
That's the
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, true. But you know the statement, right? You're not gonna go say, nah, let them die. But you're not gonna do that. That's what the movie. I think most people. That's what I feel like it does. It doesn't really do anything. I mean, it just. In fact, even the studio wrote this thing to the people who wrote. Like they can't really define why is this so important. The Baku and the Sona is none more than a gang fight because why? Why should we care? But this whole thing is happening. They wanted a clarified answer, and sadly, they didn't really get it. They got it. They
You
didn't really
can't say
get
they
it.
really own the whole planet or the asteroids around it.
Yeah, it's just. Oh yeah, it really
Also,
is a
that
bad.
time slowing thing.
Yeah, no questions. I'm like, really? No,
Yeah.
why? How? Again, Star Trek is supposed to be where these are technology and everything else. And by the way, I just love the fact it was of let's go back to nature. Nature is so great and everything is great and awesome. Like even though nature can kill you,
Yeah.
it is
I
a
love Neil deGrasse Tyson's little diatribe on that about how you can't live on 7/10 of the Earth's surface. You'd freeze or starve on half of what's left, and on half of what's left after that, you'd instantly be eaten by a predator. And then there's, earthquakes, tidal waves, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes. Yeah, I'm really feeling the love from nature here, people.
Oh goodness, they see one little nature documentary and everyone wants to live there. And if you want to live there, my thing is that's fine. That's great. You'll have a great life living with the trees and nature and the owls
And
and
the tigers and lions and bears.
oh my. But you'll have that's the
Hold
best
on.
part. Go ahead. Go ahead and live there, but don't come and involve me in my stuff. You know what I mean? Don't come and say, don't come cry to me when it doesn't work out for you. You know what I mean? They're gonna be, trust me, they'll be the first one saying, "Well, why did you tell me?" Like we told you. There's other places that told you that nature does not play around. It's not the Lion King. They will eat you alive.
Circle of life.
Yeah, they don't respect any circle of life actually out there in the wild.
No, they don't. They don't. And that should be the lesson here. And if you leave,
Oh.
if you leave out anything else here, boys and girls, just know this: that the one thing that is concrete and 100% true, that nature will kill you if you just basically try to live among it for expended pounds of time.
Yeah,
Because
back when our
that's what it
ancestors
does.
lived among nature, the average lifespan was what, 18, 19?
Yeah,
You'd make
yeah.
it
Yeah, this
past
is the
30.
Jungle Book. You don't just have to worry about Shere Khan.
You have to worry about the panthers. No. Heck, you gotta worry about
Panthers
the
and bears.
bugs.
Those animals would have killed
Mhm.
that boy in the Jungle Book.
Yeah,
And the
the
wolf.
bugs, the parasites, everything.
The snake.
All the
You'll not want to.
diseases, the bacteria, viruses, all of that. Things that we just don't have to deal with. We don't have to deal with malaria. Smallpox is gone. We don't have to worry about polio and didn't really have to worry about things like measles and pertussis and diphtheria, but now those are coming back thanks to the anti-vaxxers.
Great job.
Uh,
But it's, again, I
Follow the
mean,
Oregon
people,
Trail game. Broke my leg. Now I'm dead.
you're done.
Oh,
yeah,
it's
By the
gonna
pretty
way,
be
much.
polio.
and don't mess with fire ants either, because
Oh, geez. We have those around here. Oh.
they will screw you up. That's what actually back in the day, saw this series on History Channel like Texas Rising. Me and my dad watched that for a minute. It was like we talked about ways that the Indians, like basically Native Americans, like took care of their enemies. They said, well, one of them they kept you alive and dug like your head right here, like just the sand up to you or your neck, bury you, and that the fire ants take care of you.
Oh,
That's what
yeah.
they did.
Oh.
Yeah. Hey, you're not gonna see that on in Pocahontas. You didn't see that in
A
Pocahontas. And again, I think that
lot
would
of
make
things
the
you
movie
didn't
better.
see in Pocahontas. Let's be honest about that. There's just a lot of things.
Yeah, but then again, real stories aren't real full of drama.
There was a website somewhere what the Disney princesses would have looked like, if they had actually existed and they had, models dressed up as women from that time and things like that.
Yeah, I gotta look
Yeah.
that up. But yeah, just the reality is much more interesting than the one in the fanciful storytelling. Which don't get me wrong, I like good story now and then, but sometimes the reality is more interesting.
Yeah, but getting back to
And
what you were saying earlier, like, if you had the cure for cancer around you, well, something in the real world, a lot of people have been going about all this fracking stuff, about like you have water that you can set on fire. Well, that's not because of the fracking, that's because you live over a deposit of natural gas, and as John Stossel pointed out, if you can set your water on fire, lucky you, because then you can go have them go and they'll buy it from you. Because
yeah,
in this country, we have mineral rights to the land we're on. And
yeah,
that's why natural gas is so cheap here. It's not that cheap in England because they don't have mineral rights to their property.
yeah, that's something I need to know. So that's what I'm gonna try to tonight. So just gonna see if my water is set so far. That means we can actually move out. Actually, just be like the Beverly Hillbillies.
I don't even think you have to move out. Just let them build a well there where they can pump out the natural gas and they'll pay you.
Hmm. Yeah, well, but speaking of payments and such, let's see. Did you see about the what is it? The story you were talking about in the Skype chat? I think early, or I think it was yesterday or today, about the United States um military, our Pentagon. Oh yeah, it was today. It says the F-35s catch fire for no reason, and the Pentagon mass ordered them because
Yeah,
they have
John
this
Lachey
mineral.
posted.
I
Yep,
don't understand.
Because
I just
F-33s are cool.
they can just
yeah
catch fire for no reason. Well,
That's
not
what
for
makes
no
them so
reason.
cool.
I
We got
mean,
hot
it's
rod
the
plane.
yeah, and then you have these problems and everything. It's just I don't understand how people these this huge thing at Pentagon. Do they have to spend all this money? Is it by law they have to spend this money? I mean,
just
why
spend
don't
it. Just spend
again?
it. It's a boondoggle. They spend it for their cronies so they can make money. But according to this story, I'm going to post it in the chat. But they've known about this since 2007. I mean, that's how
Oh
long they've
seven.
known about this.
Wow.
2007, and you're just gonna say, well, it's been what 8 years. Eventually, sometimes they would have had to do something like that. I mean, over 8 years of just of right here of just pure bureaucracy, and yet people are like, well, you can't do anything about the military. We can't cut anything out there. The military is being cut to the bone, dog it. By
Yeah.
God, dang it. But meanwhile, we have how many troops and um, plans and everything else. But by the way, I
Oh
love the
God.
fact too much. Oh man, I love there was when we took over your podcast. What's the story of like the uh what was it? Oh, the military base in Afghanistan that will never be used. They have over $100 million, so a place that will never be used, never be even be not in any military personnel
Oh, was
whatsoever.
this that building in Afghanistan?
Yep. The
Yeah.
building in Afghanistan that will never be used cost over $100 million. And I'm just sit there and I'm like, there's a lot of things you could have done with that money here. I mean, just a fraction of it, that's all. Maybe improve a little bit of the schools, make sure maybe the people in public schools know what civics are so they just don't look
Charles,
at you.
Charles, why do you want the terrorists to win?
Oh, man.
No, see, the strategy is to make really nice buildings for the terrorists to live in when they take over.
Uh, yeah. By the way, you try talking to a young high school student about civics, and they just look at you with a blank stare.
Hmm.
You want to just really be depressed. Again, I should tell the story, and they didn't
That's
know.
actually one of my daughter's best subjects, but then I've been kind of homeschooling her a lot on that one.
That's Yeah, they don't know that they don't even know what the three they don't know the whole basic government is. They don't know the legislative, judicial, and the executive. They don't know the basics of that. That should be common knowledge, but they don't.
Yeah,
Heck,
they think like the president is in charge of Congress and the courts, and he's not. He's supposed to be separate from all that. I mean,
Well, he is.
with Obama, I can understand where they have that misapprehension, but I mean that's not how it's supposed to work.
it never was meant. It was all separate. Congress. I mean, and I think that's to be a good thing because that means it's not just like one and one. It's like a deciding factor. The courts have one thing, the government has another thing, and the president has power as well. I mean, three bodies of power that at least check each other. That's it's supposed to be the way it works, but sadly, it doesn't work that way. And it needs to be that's the thing. We need to have a smart and educated populace to counteract the idiocy of the Congress and representatives and all this other stuff. But sadly, we don't have that.
And
Case in
don't forget the
point.
Supreme Court justices who just interpret the Constitution to mean exactly the opposite of what it says.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I think
It
that's
means that because we say that's what it means.
Yeah, I think that might have
Yeah.
been one of the big flaws of that plan.
Yeah.
But again, I don't understand that. I just don't understand how and maybe someone can tell me this, but I just don't really understand how we, as a country, can say we have the best education, everything else, but yet there's people out there, even including my age, don't know the basic civics are, the basic things that will how government works and everything else. I mean, I need to really do a refresher course, but me and my dad, talked about this and says, we need to have like something of a test. Like if you're voting for someone, at least know what you're doing. Like, what the civics are, what type of how this country is run, all this type of stuff. I barely passed. I got a 60. I need to do, again, refresher and everything, but there are people my age and even older who don't even they know less than that. They think the president is like a king. They say, "Oh, the president can do anything he wants." It's just like poof, there it is. I'm like, no,
Well,
it
he
doesn't
can.
work that way. Oh,
Yeah, he just makes an executive order.
Or tells his bureaucracies make up some rules.
yeah.
Yep, they just make the SEC just makes up the law, and they say, okay, you're in violation of this law that we just made up.
Oh, nip slip, $100,000 fine.
Yep. 100,000, 500,000.
And these are and people want them to regulate our internet.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I
outside,
can't think of
$100,000
anything
fine.
that could possibly go wrong with that.
Just like with the
Dang, we
video.
need the government to help stop harassers on the internet. Zoe Quinn, Brianna Wu, they're victims.
Yes, they're gonna stop. Yeah, so you're gonna stop like the what? You're gonna ban all YouTube, 4chan, Reddit,
No,
Twitter.
it's like
Pretty much.
this. It's like this.
This is the worst kind of discrimination. The kind against me.
Yes, that's what's going to be.
Yes,
Yeah.
I have a soundboard I'm playing around with now.
But it's just again, I just don't understand how governments, people just let this happen. I mean, how did this? I mean, I just in awe of how this happened. How we, the line just kept going lower and lower. It just seems like it just I know the '90s weren't the best decade in the world. I can easily point some things out, say they're wrong, but I mean, just things like everything. Just like I just got out of public school around in 2002, and it's just like the curve just get dumber and dumber and dumber. Just like it
It's
just
like that episode in South Park where the bar keeps lowering.
yes. I
Until
don't know
James
how.
Cameron comes and brings it back up. I
Uh,
don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
I don't know how you just the bar just keeps going
James
lower.
Cameron, the bravest man around.
Yeah.
James Cameron.
Oh, yeah. But I just don't understand what happened. I don't know how did they lower the bar even more. Just continues lowering the bar. It doesn't help anything, and we
They'll
barely
hire
know.
people. They'll create jobs by hiring people to dig ditches, and then they can lower the bar into the ditch.
Uh,
No, they'll
it
hire people to talk nicely to the ditch about its gender politics.
or his how they're feeling this day. Just raise his how all nicely and everything else. Which another thing that really pisses me off is how the whole political correctness stuff is
They'll talk to
just
the dirt about male gaze theory.
things that will
Or
matter.
man spreading.
Mm,
It's illegal now.
yeah,
In New York, yeah.
I don't know how these terrors and everything else are becoming like, oh my gosh, they're gonna destroy us all. No, not really. I mean, when I see real horrible persecution, like people say, oh well, Christians have been persecuted. Like, no, they're not persecuted in this country or anything else. Or it's the same thing. Because when I look at say in other countries where real persecution, where real horrible, sexist attitudes, real rape culture exists, and real persecution via religious or what type of founding you are, if you're atheist or Christian or anything else, getting tortured or what have you if you don't believe in a certain God or where you're religious stuff. To me, that is something really horrible. But yeah, one of these people in college, I think Krista Summers brought this up, like for feminists, is the video which that you should watch. It was in the Skype the Picasso Skype chat thing. It says I think Dave Ducott who put us in the video, put it there and said that where Krista Summers saying, where was the feminists talking about these horrible issues like in colleges? Where are they talking about these issues of rape culture in these other in the Middle East and all these other places? Instead, they're talking about rape culture in the United States, which is
But Charles,
honestly
that would
at
be
zero.
racist.
Yeah, racist. Even though he had, I think, I can't pronounce her name because Sami, I can't say her name because if I did, I'd probably butcher it and be terrible.
Never
And
stopped
probably,
me before.
let's see. She was on Bill Maher. I think she was there, and
Ooh.
I know, so I don't like her, but he can find some decent guests around. But she was really decent. She goes around. She says she was actually kicked out of trying to what her name was. But she was actually said, "Oh, you can't no, you can't speak at this college because you might offend someone." I'm like, really? Talking about this subject. This is this important subject that is.
Oh, yeah. I know the one you're talking about. I don't remember her name, but she was talking about just what it's actually like for Muslim women, and I think wasn't it one of those where they had to go to their safe spaces.
Yeah, the safe space. I honestly just when I first heard that, I was like, this has to be a joke because if it is real, I just like how can you actually
Could
function?
anything possibly be more sexist and degrading to women than saying they need a safe space to go to whenever they hear something that goes against what they believe?
Oh no, it's not. It doesn't count if it's women who are telling them to do that. Other women who are telling them to do that.
Yeah, you can't be sexist if you're a woman. You can't be a racist if you're black. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is why a lot of problems right here. This is the reason why we have all these problems right now. We're too afraid to talk about these issues. We're waiting to the point of like we have to wait till another person talks about this issue.
Or
We
until
have to wait.
systemic becomes a thing.
Yeah, we have to wait until someone else with the same color or different color uh, that says this stuff. We have to wait until this different color person says this, because if a different color person says it, or says this, then it would sound so much better. The world would be so much better if we just said this person. Oh, by the way, it's Ayn Hisari Ali. That's her name. I can't pronounce it, so I apologize again. I think she really goes to colleges and speaks about. I'll give you the Wikipedia article of what she does. Uh, she is a Somali-born Dutch American dual citizen activist. Uh, Talks about, she goes into these again. She goes into colleges and places to talk about Islam. Talk about how people who are treated, men and women are, and it's something that a lot of people she should be something again, someone that really she is she is known as an infidel as well. Oh, wait a second, it's that's a book, I think. Infidel, My Life. Sorry, I see Ayan. Sorry, Ali. Can't pronounce her name. So again, I apologize. I'll just put the Wikipedia thing up here for the chat. So if anyone want to check her out.
Okay. By the way, just in case people who were using the Q&A app before is wondering what's happened to it, well, quite frankly, so am I, because I don't see it right now, and I think they might have taken that away.
I think it was because of the Bender clips.
No, I mean, it wasn't there earlier when I came in, so I don't know.
It's Google. Just blame Google because they're trying to upgrade or save. Like, we're trying to fix things that are not broken.
Yeah.
Google. Oh, when the subscriptions, my subscription button tab wasn't there.
I remember when you actually had subscriptions, you could actually see the videos you actually want to watch. Instead of basically have to negotiate and basically have to find all these other things, because yeah, how many times am I get like, hey, I didn't know you made a new video. I'm like, how many times that you're like, oh, I just made a new video. Oh, I didn't see it, man. I didn't know what it was on. Did you look at my subscriptions? Yeah, but it didn't come up. I'm like, why? Because it had some weird.
Because they don't show you all the new ones. You have to scroll down and click load more. Yeah. If you want to see all the new ones.
Why can't we just have that? That'd be nice, Just once, just to say, okay, new video from new person? Perfect. Let me just get like something like that. A little bit of love. But they don't. It's just like, no love for you. No love for you. You're gonna have to sit watch a video that you watched like 10 months ago that you just accidentally clicked. That is what you want to watch. I miss the old YouTube every day.
So why don't we go over to the story, Charles, that you wanted to talk to about the 11-year-old boy whose parents were arrested because he was playing in his yard?
Oh, yeah. This was from Reason.com. It says, one afternoon, it starts here. It says, this is in Florida, so,
Yeah, well, there you go.
There it is. You have to, prepare yourself. This is from Florida, so assume the positions, people. But, it says, one afternoon this past April, Florida mom and dad, and I didn't identify them in the article, said they could not get home in time to let their 11-year-old son into the house. The boy didn't have a key, so he played basketball in the yard for 90 minutes. That's pretty much it. And the neighbor called the cops, and then when the parents came in there, they were saying that they were being delayed by traffic and in the rain and everything else.
And it's always neighbors. Who are these neighbors? That's what I want to know. It's like,
I just feel like these trolls or aliens.
But yeah, they were arrested for negligence because being delayed by traffic by something to no fault of their own. so they couldn't do anything about it. So they were put in handcuffs, stripped shirts, fingerprinted, and held overnight in jail. And it was over a month until the 11-year-old had to beg the judge to give him back to his parents and such. Like he had to
Yeah.
beg the judge, saying, "Please, I want their mom and dad back." And
Like
11-year-old,
a month away from his home and a month away from his parents is not worse than being on his own in the yard for 90 minutes.
yeah. In fact, he has another. They had another kid that was taken away as well, a 4-year-old brother, and they were taken away as well, saying, right here, the law says a person who willfully or by culpable negligence neglects neglects a child without causing great bodily harm, personal disability, permanent disability, or permanent disfigurement to the child commits a felony of the third degree. So the authorities.
Which one of those was that?
Yes, it says the law is a person who the crime they're charged with. The parents is a person who willfully or by culpable negligence neglects a child without causing great bodily harm, permanent disability, or permanent disfigurement to the child commits a felony of the third degree.
Yeah, which one of those things happened to the child?
Nothing. And the authorities, here's the thing. This is authorities claims he had no access for water or shelter. They says they have an open shed in the backyard and 2 working sinks and 2 hoses. And they said he had no food. Well, he ate his snacks already. He had no bathroom. But
As if he's gonna die of dehydration after 90 minutes.
And it says, he has no bathroom. But the responding officer found our yard good enough to relieve. Wow! So the police officer relieved himself in front of the yard while his son sat in a police car alone. He's just like, he did his business in the yard,
Marking their territory.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's I don't.
But I mean, this is the ridiculous thing. I mean, it's one thing to be overly concerned about our children. It's another thing to be paranoid about completely the wrong things. I mean, if you had, like, let's say you had, a couple of kids, 5, 6 years old, and you're going to just run to the store right quick, and you'll be back in 10 minutes. So, so you figure, okay, I'll leave them there. And if they catch you with that, they say, no, that's child neglect, because you don't know what could have happened there. There could have been a fire. They could have, gotten a sharp knife or something. Stuff that basically
spontaneously exploded if it was in
Good talk, everyone.
Jets.
Hey, Chris. But stuff that basically has a
What are we talking
zero.
about here?
We're talking about Child Protective Services.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, if your kid's being home alone for 10 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever, basically there is zero chance, next to nothing, of any of that happening to them. But no, they say you have to put your kids in the car and take them off to the store with you or wherever you're going, even though the biggest killer of children in this country is traffic accidents near the home. They're in far greater danger in the car with you than they are leaving them at home, and yet it's a horrible thing to leave them at home.
And not to mention you can get in
checking and consistent and actually caring.
Yeah. Not to mention you can get in big trouble for simply, like, if you go shopping, if you leave them in the car and the windows are open and the AC's on, you'll still get in trouble,
Yeah. Well, we're talking about a story here where the kid got home from school, I guess. He didn't have a key to get in, so he was just playing basketball in the yard for 90 minutes until the parents got home, but then, of course, Child Protective Services came and they took the kid, and Charles was telling us about things like that, including apparently the cop relieving himself, urinating in the yard and stuff like that.
Yeah, the cop was urinating. I'm like, really? That's amazing. But you know what's funny thing is? My parents left me and my brother and sister alone when we were like 4 or 5 years old. Like, told my older brothers to watch them, and we just relaxed, played a couple games and stuff like that. And we didn't really do much problems. We were okay by ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember walking down to the library or going to this is back in the 90s, and I don't know what's going on, but it's like you can't do that anymore. I'm like, if your kid is not in a leash or something, like when like 10, 11 years old or something, they're like you're a bad parent. You're a bad parent for leaving them alone for 5 minutes while you go do your get shopping or doing things like that.
Yeah,
How dare
no,
you ruin their errands?
yeah. I hate child protective services because they're so backwards. It's like they're overprotective for non-aggressive cases, but for cases where they're really needed, they don't do anything.
So
When they do something, they're actually worse than what's actually happening.
Yep. Oh yeah, like for instance, there was this one YouTube user who I really, really do respect called Keyframe, and she recently, got out of her house because her parents were very, very abusive towards her to the point where her own mother actually tried to strangle her to death one time, and she actually went to protective services, and they said they would help her, but they told her you have to drop out of school and make all these other personal sacrifices, which would have ruined her future. So she said no. It's like,
Yeah.
really, that's the best we can do.
So she had to drop out of school just to get any type of help? It seems to me that was an assault.
She chose to stay in the abusive household because she did not want to give up her educational career.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, that's assault. Why didn't the parents get arrested or what have you? I'm like, shoot, if that happened.
She, according to an interview, because she's good now, but she said, in her personal little rant is that the police either didn't believe her or when they did arrest her, her father just bailed her mother out.
Oh, joy,
Yeah.
bail.
Yeah, that's what I hate. But that's what I hate about bail. If you're under arrest for a victimless crime, it's 90% of the time you don't get bail. But if you violently assault someone and you're clearly a threat, they say, just pay a few $100 bill and we'll let you go. It's like,
oh God, what was it? It was one of those comedy news shows. I think it was Last Week Tonight.
Yep.
Who's got John Oliver did that whole segment about how bail was just basically a way of incarcerating the poor, while the rich just here's a revolving door. You can just come in and come straight out.
Yep. Oh
Yep.
yeah. Again, I'm all for the non-aggression principle, but if I was like the judge in that case, I would tell Keyframe's mother, look, you're a danger to yourself, you're a danger to your daughter, you're a danger to your husband. I'm sorry, but you tried to kill someone. We're gonna keep you in jail until we can figure out what to do with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's assault. If there's actual marks of this, I don't understand how that does not work.
But that just made me so angry because everyone just abandoned Keyframe and her own friends had to help her by starting a fundraiser so they could get her like $20,000 so she could leave the place and go to California to school and all that.
Yeah. Again.
But it's like talking about this kid, just half hour or whatever, playing ball in the backyard. Again, basically there's a very, very close to zero chance of anything happening. But it's disturbing because they said, quote, our lawyer came to us and said that if we admitted that we didn't know that it was wrong to let our son stay in the backyard, but that we now know it's wrong and we will never let it happen again, and that we explained this to our son, he would let the children come home with us. It's like, well, what if you realize that there basically is nothing wrong with it? Basically, if you just disagree with the state, no matter how the facts back you up, they get to take your kids from you. Just for disagreeing with the state. You have to agree with the state to get your kids back.
Oh, yeah. And it's funny because my friend Jason, his uncle raised him, kind of like that, and he actually almost got in trouble with child services because his uncle used to breed dogs, as a hobby, and when my friend Jason was like only 5 years old, they'd leave him alone, for whatever reason. He would play with the dogs, and one time Child Services, came up and said, you can't do that. That's unsafe. He could have been bitten. And it's like, my dogs are properly trained, and not to mention, he pointed out, and besides, when I was growing up as a little kid, I grew up in the rough side of the Bronx. My parents left me home alone in a gang-ridden town, yet no kids got hurt, In fact, we even said I even knew a couple of kids, who had older siblings that were gang members, and and those gangs had a rule that says, you under absolutely no circumstances do you harm another child unless they're a member of a rival gang. So as long as you're not a member of a rival gang, you were pretty much, untouchable from them for the most part.
That's the sad part. We've seen this before. You're probably safer with the gangs than you are with the police.
Oh yeah. Because gangs, historically, even going back to the bootleggers, contrary to what the media likes to portray them, they had a very strict, no civilian casualties policies.
Yeah, and not like the police. Well, it's open season.
Yep. Not to mention, here's another thing: when the mob did, occasionally break that law, when like something did happen, where a guy was trying to drive by another gang member and he accidentally killed a child, which did happen. You know what the mafia did? They punished the guy.
Oh, that was one part about the John Oliver report that the rest of it was good, but I kind of facepalmed on this part because he was talking about the bounty hunters, the bail bondsmen who would actually go and get someone back so that they wouldn't lose the bond money and things like that. And he was talking about, and yes, here's this one time where they actually went into the wrong home, and here's another time where they actually killed the family's dog. And I'm like, yeah, how many times have we seen stories like that from the police?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
in all
many
honesty, I trust bail bondsmen much better to enforce law than police do, because at least the bail bondsmen have a much better incentive not to screw up.
And they use stun guns. They
Yep.
use stuns. They don't use pistol. They don't use like SWAT type equipment, which that's another thing.
Well, we've even heard of police like doing completely the wrong thing with the tasers, where you just tase the guy and tase him. First of all, not out of defense or anything, but just as a method of compliance. And also, the way you're supposed to use those things is you take them down, then you cuff them, and that's it. But I mean, even there have been times like the person's down, they're even cuffed or whatever. They just keep tasing him and tasing him and tasing him until they have a heart attack and die.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. And you want to know something? The unintended consequences of police abuse, because I've actually heard this about some European nations. Some European nations, because they hear all these reports of police abusing the United States in a desperate attempt, to make sure that doesn't happen in their city. What happens is that they under-equip their police officers, so when they do encounter that very rare occasional violent criminal, they're helpless. That's another unintended consequence. The police officer, so you're endangering the lives of other officers, because some towns are legitimately afraid of police brutality, so they say, well, here's the thing, we're gonna strip away all your equipment, so some police officers who are good cops have to stop, very violent people with nothing but a bottle of pepper spray. And I've actually heard from plenty of people that says pepper spray is one of the most unreliable methods you can use to take down a person.
I disagree with there, because I was sprayed with pepper spray. No, it wasn't like in the face, but actually someone. I'm gonna tell the story to y'all yet, but when I was back in high school, some lovely student sprayed pepper spray around the computer room, outside the computer room, just sprayed it around, like some potpourri. And then we tried to get inside the door to do the computer testing or what have you, graphics or what have you. And well, let's just say that none of the not only myself but most of the class didn't really do well. Didn't finish our studies because we were just knocked out because some idiot again, sprayed the pepper spray. We couldn't even do anything. It's like with our eyes watering.
My friend Jason is an ex-U.S. Army Ranger, and he's been pepper sprayed and maced, as part of it. I mean, not pepper sprayed, but tear gassed, as part of his training. And in all his experience, because especially from him hanging out with the military police, there's typically one of two results that they've encountered with using pepper spray. Either the person's barely affected because they're either immune, or they build up a resistance to it, or two, it affects and gets them all blinded, but it makes them crazier.
No, sure. So
yeah, they actually sprayed. There was actually one, a Taliban guy that they tried to get in, and trying to avoid a controversy because he didn't look like he had any weapons. They sprayed him with pepper spray. He ended up putting out a machete, and while screaming and crying, he was swinging it around, and he actually nicked a guy.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's why he prefers tasers. I mean, it's not the taser's fault. It's just, some police officers just get a little too bad with them. Here's actually a funny story that I've actually heard. There was actually a police department that sued a company that made tasers because they claimed it was too similar to look into the guns. Why? Because there was an incident where a lady was dealing with a drunken rowdy guy, and he wasn't cooperating, like he was getting physical, so they had no choice but to tase him, but instead she reached for her gun by accident. And they sued the taser company, claiming, "Oh, your taser looked too similar to the gun." So it's like, yep, they do not want to take personal accountability. Like, I understand she wasn't, deliberately trying to kill the guy. At least to my knowledge, she wasn't. But still, you gotta admit when you fuck up,
Yeah, personal accountability.
Yeah,
but sadly, no one else is here. Yeah. But even worse about the story is that they were actually the parents had to go to parenting classes. The kids had to go to therapy.
Daycare.
Yeah.
Yeah, daycare. Yeah.
Yep.
And then they had to say, oh, you had to admit to this stuff, and they just had to do all this other stuff.
And they still have to go to a criminal trial. Hopefully that case will be dropped, but who knows if it doesn't get dropped.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm not.
Who's getting served here again? What is this whole thing at the end of the day? Where's the justice
Who's
for?
better off than they were before? There
Oh,
are
yeah.
people in this
Please.
scenario who's better off than they were before. I'll give you a hint. It's not the parents. It's not the kid who's better off.
Bureaucrats, please.
Yep. Oh yeah, not to mention a lot of these, child protection services, they get their funding based on how many kids they rescue, so that's why they jump on any, minor, any case, no matter how minor it is,
I wonder if they actually, if you looked at it
Yeah.
and actually saw, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
the other kids and everything else.
Yeah.
How many cases are just like this?
Yeah.
I wonder how much that number will go down.
Yeah. And another problem is that, like I said, it's kind of ironic that I'm going to bring this up because we were just talking about Keem Frame, but, even though it is true there are abusive parents out there, there have been cases where parents have gotten in trouble because their kid, for whatever reason, lied about being abused for whatever reason, and, it's like they tell their, it's like they tell their parents, that, oh, my dad or mom does this to me, and then they take it seriously, and then finally the kid flat out admits, when the parents aren't around, by the way, okay, fine, I made it up as a joke, or, I just wanted to get in trouble for whatever reason, but...
Or even worse, you have some crank doing something like, oh, I forget what it's called, where they take the autistic's hands and they move it around the keyboard.
Oh, yeah,
and
that,
facilitated communication,
Yeah.
And so then all of a sudden these autistic kids start reporting all this sexual abuse, and families were destroyed, even though
I know.
I
know. I remember seeing a documentary case about that where there was this one girl. She was severely autistic to the point where she could barely talk or read, and they used the facilitated therapy. And apparently, she ended up, they talked about how, thanks to facilitated therapy, she can report things, and they talked about how she had a strong opinion about politics, what she wanted to do in life and all that. So finally, one journalist, said, I'm a little skeptical about that. So he went to the girl, and without her therapist, he asked her, using methods that, that are actually done by actual psychologists to teach autistic kids how to read. He asked her to identify words. She could not identify a single one of them. So they did further investigation and found out, yep, it was the facilitator that was making all the opinions.
Yep.
Hmm.
And I mean, you've also got things like, okay, here's a negligent parent. The kid hasn't bathed in a week and they've missed a couple of meals. Okay, that's not a good decision. That's not a good situation to be in. That's, you might want to intervene on that. But then they take the kid, they put the kid in the foster home, and in the foster home the kid's sexually abused. And it's like, well, where was the kid better off?
Yeah, oops.
Yeah.
And then you have the same problem over and over again, and nothing gets solved. Nothing gets nothing really gets
Yep.
helping them.
I told this joke to Shane, but one joke I'm gonna put in my comic strip, because there's one kid that does have abusive parents, but the police don't believe him. And a joke he says, I don't get it. How come child services doesn't help actual kids who are in danger? And finally, his friend recommends, hey, I got an idea that's gonna work. It's like, well, what's that? When your parents are asleep, spray paint their faces brown, and then contact the DA and said your father has a marijuana bong in his house. They'll take care of it.
That makes no sense.
Put them in blackface so they'll think they're black, and then they'll go after them.
Yeah, and then tell them they have a marijuana bond. The DA will definitely take care of that. Sure, there's going to be a little collateral damage, but just keep the dog. Just keep the dog.
To the face.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Keep the dog. If you have any pets, tell the neighbors to look after them. Wear a face mask, but they'll take care of your parents.
Yeah, but
because the thing is, even if they don't find a marijuana bong, they'll still find an excuse to arrest them.
Yeah, That's the problem. Again, there's no personal responsibility. No one's actually going to say.
I remember reading one case where the DA, they raided a house, basically tore the place apart. They found out that there was no drugs in the area. So what do? They arrested the guy and said, yeah, but he was putting up a fight, so we're going to arrest him for resisting arrest.
Wait, he did what?
Well, basically, he was arguing back with the DA because he originally thought they were armed criminals breaking into his house, so they arrested him for resisting arrest and obstruction. Yeah. And that's the thing there. They raided his house in the middle of the night. They did not announce, we're with the DEA or the police, so the guy didn't know who they were, and he legitimately thought they were bank robbers or burglars or something,
Well, that's like Katherine Johnston all over again.
Yeah, it's
like she was that 90-year-old woman or whatever it was, mostly blind, mostly deaf. All she knows is there are, people bursting into her home in this, real poor area with lots of gangs around. So she fires one warning shot into the ceiling, and they just gun her down.
Yep.
Oh, and then plant drugs on her.
Yeah. There was another incident where something like that happened to a guy who thought his house was being broken into. The police, shot him to pieces. And the scary thing is, he was still alive. He was bleeding to death, and it is possible he could have saved him. But why didn't the EMT save him? Because when they arrived, the SWAT team told them, "You can't rescue him. We got to secure the scene first." And it took them like an hour. And by that time, he bled to death.
Yeah, that's again the Yahoo cowboy aspect of it, and this is in reality like, oh, this is how I feel, but and again the reality comes in, these people get killed. I remember there was actually one case that you had this I think it happened again, both in Texas actually, not one but two cases. That you had a no-knock warrant. The police came in and the police one of the police, the SWAT members, actually got shot and killed because both occupants actually said they were defending themselves. They didn't know who they were. They didn't know who they are and everything else, and it's a danger for the police as well. So I don't understand why they continue to do these type of raids.
That's why I applaud that one judge, who after that one guy killed a sheriff's deputy because he did the no-knock SWAT raid and he thought it was a burglar, and the judge finally came to his senses and said, you know what, when you break into a person's house in the middle of the night and don't flat out announce that you're the police department, they're probably going to think that you're a burglar. So they concluded that, you know what, for the first time ever, the police is responsible. They took improper procedures, so they should have to pay the consequences for it.
1 in a million.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anything happened to that judge as a result? Because there was one story where this judge just completely lays into the DA just from well, first of all, there was fraudulent testimony from the cop, and there was all sorts of misbehavior on the part of the DA, and he just let her have it and then dismissed the case. And so they said, okay, well, from now on, this judge is only going to be presiding over civil cases. He's not doing criminal court anymore. So you finally get a good one.
And they punish him. They punish him for it. And this is why, a lot of people have a very cynical look at the justice system. When someone actually does justice, they say, here it is. We're going to finally do we're going to finally put the people who did the wrong thing, regardless of their police officer not, put them in, give them the personal responsibility. They got own it for their crimes. You know what they do? They push them aside. So, no, you're doing this stuff now. Again, it's just no personal accountability. And when it does,
sorry, the plumbers were here. Okay.
But you don't understand. It's just no personal responsibility. Yeah. And again, what would you do if someone don't? And besides, you do hear stories of people getting like fake cops or what have you. You don't know what type of cops or anything else. I remember there was actually one video of like say, I want to know what your ID is, like everything else. He asked this, it's like I think it was a black dude saying, "What's your warrant? Where's your warrant? Where's your badge release number?" Ask all this, and the police were getting pissed off. They were getting frustrated, like, "Sir, we're trying to prevent crime." I'm like, "I don't care. I want to know what your warrant is and everything else." And they left. I'm like, "Yeah, that's to me. That's how you." And he told me he was recording. And he said, "I don't care. Just let us." I'm like, seriously, you couldn't just answer these guys simple questions. He delayed and delayed it. I'm like, you couldn't even answer these simple questions. I just could just what happened? Why the police are just so like this gung ho thing? Was it always like this, or just
I think what happened was when this gun hoing, because this thing goes all the way back to the 1930s too, because the 1930s cops were known to do this thing too. In fact, in some cases, they were flat out known to execute people, if they couldn't bring them back alive. That's actually how famous gang member Pretty Boy Floyd died. He was shot in the leg by a cop. He fell to the ground, and the FBI guys who were going to arrest him, they asked him, should we bring him back or no? And they decided, let's just kill him, and they flat out executed him. There were several eyewitnesses, and the police flat out admitted it. Yeah. I think that's actually where some people think, when the police got aggressive was when J. Edgar Hoover took over the FBI, and he tried to modernize it and make it more aggressive, and all the police from all over the world from all over the states started copying him. Yeah. J. Edgar Hoover, yeah. You've heard of him, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's the guy who ruined the economy by deregulating and cutting spending, right? And then FDR fixed everything.
Yeah.
For 10 years of depression.
Yeah.
Yeah, he fixed everything, and then next year we were in the depression until the war hit, which is somehow he's forever saved because, or even though
Yeah.
don't mention the internment camps that.
Yeah, J. Edgar Hoover's the guy that turned the FBI from a strictly investigative group. That's what it was started with. It was strictly an investigative group like detectives to an armed militia, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. It's because it occurred during a time where where bootleggers and gangs and all that were out of control, and rather than admitting that it was their failed policies like prohibition and some of the regulations, the government said, "Oh, we need more guns and armed men to fight these guys." So. Yeah, because here's the thing: when the government first started forming that, state control police departments, at least they understood, to keep them limits. The first, police departments had very strict rules against them, on what they could and couldn't do,
Actually, I think it was for a few decades after the start of this country, you didn't even have professional career police.
Yep.
You didn't have paid police forces.
Yep, they were volunteered. Yep, it was like a volunteer list. It was a volunteer list, and if you approved, the pass, they'd give you a badge in a billy club, and they'd say, okay, like every, so often during like this time of the day, you go around the streets and just, make sure everyone's, not being rowdy, and that's actually what they were. They weren't, guys that were going after criminals. Their job was just strictly to keep the peace, and they only intervened only if someone was getting hurt. It's not like today where they're patrolling around trying to make sure if you're wearing your seatbelt or if you're operating a business without your permit.
Or anything else that'll bring them revenues.
Yeah, I saw this funny parody about Monopoly because there's this board game out there called Anti-Monopoly, and I guess the point of the game Anti-Monopoly is that small businesses can't work in monopolies, but there's one thing that they forgot. The way a real monopoly works isn't that you buy out everything and you overcharge everything. The real way it works is that you open up your own business and you try to charge fair prices, but the big competitor says, I don't want this. He lobbies the government, and the government in turn shows up at your place and says, yep, you don't have the permits, so you can't operate your business anymore. Cease and desist.
Yeah, that's it. And most monopolies, if they don't do that, don't last long. It might seem long. For example, say the video game monopoly of like in the 80s and such. Like, oh, what's going to happen? Oh, this thing fell, but Nintendo started coming up. Then you had other, Sega. Then eventually you had other people. So they didn't really have.
Then Sony came along and pretty much destroyed Nintendo. And the funny thing is that Sony never would have became the video game giant that it is today had it not been for Nintendo pretty much stabbing them in the back. Have you guys heard of
yes, the CES show in 1992.
The Sony CDI add-on for the SNES. They were making it, but
they were going to debut it on the show. Actually, they were right there, and that was the story. And then Nintendo said no, and then with the seal up CDI. Right on the show, announced that partnership right there.
Yep.
And Sony was looking like, what in the world? They had this huge project. They were ready to go, and it was right there.
And that's what happened. They spent millions of dollars building this CDI thing, and it's like, well, what are we going to do with it? But then some guy said, it's still pretty good. How about we just make our own game system? So they made the PlayStation, and while there's still a debate on what's better, PlayStation or N64, there's no denying the PlayStation gave the N64 a run for its money.
Well, nowadays, I'm not really into the gaming thing, but from what I've seen nowadays, it seems to be like it's between PlayStation and Xbox, and Nintendo is kind of like a distant third or something.
Well, actually, Nintendo and Xbox are like neck and neck. PlayStation's just really far up there.
Yeah, 20 million consoles, but I see the same thing happening to them. What happened to the Nintendo Wii, the last generation, is that eventually people are going to be like, well, I bought this thing, but I have no games for it, and what happened to Nintendo Wii? Well, it just wouldn't collect dust, and they didn't care about any of the games or what have you. So
that's the problem I have with my PS4. I love it; it's a beautiful system, but I barely have any games to play for it.
Yeah, maybe Bloodborne and not much
Batman.
else.
Yeah. Killzone, Shadowfall, Tomb Raider, there's like that, and not to mention the games that are coming out for it are lackluster, like Evil Within. I hated that game. I don't know why everyone liked it,
Yeah.
Have you guys played Evil Within?
At least. There's Batman, but
then
again,
PC, though.
There was also that. Like it was like that 1886 game or something, and it looked really
Order
cool.
1886
Yeah, it
only
looked
has
really,
5 hours of gameplay.
yeah, it looked really cool, but then everyone said it was only a 5-hour long cutscene. And I'm like, really? You spent this time building this magnificent steampunk-like world, and you only give it like 5 hours of gameplay and like 10 hours of interactive cutscenes? It's like, really?
And-
Are you shitting me?
And no replayability.
Yeah,
And
the new
no
Wolfenstein
co-op.
game had like replayability. It was like a
yeah,
dumb shooter.
Yeah,
It was a
Yeah.
smart.
there was
It was a
only
actually,
8
it wasn't a
hours.
dumb
No.
shooter. It had some pretty
Yeah.
funny comedy. Not like
Yeah.
cracking jokes, just like
yeah.
more situational stuff.
Yeah, Order 1886 had only 5 hours of gameplay, no online content whatsoever, and just no real point to play it again. And this is, I'm like, I said this before on my little podcast, plug, but who cares? But I said this before, and I'll say it again. It's just basically a high-end filler, and there's nothing will kill a system faster than high-end filler.
Yeah,
And-
Well, there's an
like,
Yeah, you know,
economic
I think,
reason
in
why
all honesty,
games
in
that
all
are
honesty,
coming out early for new consoles are not as good because there's not as much budgets put into them because not as many people have these new consoles.
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I'm just gonna say this because consoles will always hold a special place in my heart. But wish I could tell this to all those companies that are making gaming consoles. Look, the reason why you guys are losing a lot of money to PCs is because you're too busy trying to make your consoles all fancy and all that, and instead of making them that work and build games for them,
kind of like the Wii
Well, I
U
mean,
doing
it's
right
kind
now.
of like if you kind of have this chicken and egg thing. If a new console comes out, no one's gonna make games because not many people buy the consoles, but not many people are going to buy the console if there's not a lot of games out there.
I mean,
Yep.
it used to be that Nintendo would make the games for their own consoles. I mean, they still do, but most console companies don't really make first-party games.
Yep.
Yeah. It's just again, this is why the only next gen console I do have is the Wii U, and I'm feeling happy with that purchase. I have multiple games with that, and honestly,
Are you a kid
I
or a squid?
Splatoon is great,
Yeah.
but I don't really. Again, I'm like until maybe 2016, maybe later, I'm not getting a next gen console. Or at best, I'll finally
did you have the
maybe.
Nintendo NX? How much money you want to bet that's going to be a VR headset?
I think it's gonna be an Android thing. That's what
It's
it's
going to be the Virtual Boy too.
Yeah. Yeah, Virtual Boy. I've never understood the whole concept of virtual reality and all, but
It's
like-
idiotic because I think until we get the holodeck from Star Trek, it all comes back around to Star Trek, people.
Yeah.
Until we get that,
We
I
just
think it's
about
pointless.
have it if you've seen any of the demonstrations of those augmented reality goggles.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but
That's
that's,
some cool
the
stuff.
thing. I don't want to wear something like that. I don't want to just like, okay, this and
Yeah.
the other. Like it feels like you'll probably break
Or
things.
you get so, or as South Park made fun of, you get so warped into the virtual reality console that you develop a mental disorder where you can't tell the difference between reality and virtual reality and the real world.
I'm
Yeah.
satisfied with your service.
Yeah, I actually
I have to say I'm skeptical of that because every time, they said this back, in the 19th century when novels got popular, people can't tell the difference between the novel world and the real world.
Wow.
Genre people have always heard this, they can't tell, they don't know Star Trek isn't real and stuff like that. They can't tell the difference between, they think video games are real and so
Yeah,
they're
it's funny-
violent
it's-
video games,
it's
so they're
funny,
violent.
it's funny-
Every
Video games
single
cause
time,
violence or sexism.
every single time someone has said that about a medium, it has ended up being wrong.
Yeah, and here's the thing that you mentioned Star Trek, because with the exception of the phasers and the warp drive, a lot of the tech in Star Trek actually looks pretty outdated compared to modern standards.
Oh yeah, we've surpassed it.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, you've got these communicators and you can't see the other person in it? I can see the guy. See, he's right there. I see him. He can see me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or another good example is the Alien franchise. I mean, it's like in the Alien franchise, we have the ability to travel to distant planets, and we've got all these like space guns and portable
And they're
nuclear
still
weapons.
DOS.
Yeah, and they're still using vacuum tubes in their technology, and they still have videotapes, and it's supposed to take place in the 24th century, and all
Yeah.
that.
I actually kept that feeling that Alien Isolation game.
Yeah.
It's just really hard to predict what technology is
Yeah.
going to be like
And
more than a few years out.
Yeah.
So you
With
watch the
exception of
original
things like
Star
phase
Trek.
warp drives.
So you watch
Yeah.
the original Star Trek, and you have all of their consoles and screens and everything. That was about what it came to be like 5 or 10 years later.
Yeah.
You look at Star Trek: The Next Generation, and you see all of the interfaces they have. That was just a few years after that. You have the pads on Star Trek. People say, well, that protected the tablets, but our tablets have gone way beyond what the pads were able to do.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, and I actually saw a funny parody of that actually one time. It was making fun of Back to the Future 2, where Michael J. Fox lives in 2015. It's like, oh, it's 2015 for real. Now where's my hoverboard and my self-tying shoes? And one guy goes, oh darn, we didn't invent that. Why, all we got is this 3D printer that can probably clone a human organ, and we managed to develop a prone that can land on a comet. Oh darn it!
Look at how much Back to the Future 2 didn't predict.
Yeah, we don't have the hoverboards, but we do have a bunch of other cool shit out there,
We have instantaneous worldwide communication.
Yeah.
What we're doing right now.
Yeah, and in all honesty, when I got into this conversation with the Fallout fans, that's the one thing I will say I really hate about the Fallout world, is that it's mentioned that after the 1950s occurred, like the entire world just got stuck in that mentality, and I'm like, look, as a guy who studies human behavior as a philosophy, that is impossible. You're telling me that everyone got stuck in that 1950s mentality until the 2070s? It's like, have you seen how people behaved in the 1960s? They behaved pretty differently, and that was
different generation. Different generation.
I'm just gonna say, how did people go in the 1950s and just get stuck in that mentality? What happened? That's why
I think a lot of it's when you're dealing with science fiction. I think this is one of those unspoken, unwritten rules.
Yeah.
When you've got people in the 23rd century or wherever, and they're going around doing things, what they're doing is they're taking our society and culture and putting it in that situation and seeing what happens, so we can relate to it, and we can kind of look at ourselves from the outside looking in and tell stories from that aspect of it.
Yeah. But the problem is that, like I said, is that it was made in the 90s, and these people are behaving like the 50s. Now they do have some futuristic technology and all that, like laser guns, and the idea is that they didn't invent the semiconductor microprocessor. And my personal opinion is how, because last time I checked, that was made by the free market. But I digress. But again, it's like I don't know. It's like, I mean, that's the thing that just bugs me a little bit. Fallout is like every single rule about anthropology is just broken in that just so they can have a nuclear war. In all honesty, the way the Fallout background should have worked is that in the 1960s, instead of cooperating, the United States decided to go to war with the Soviet Union, then that's what caused the war. That would have made much more sense and explained a lot better,
Yeah, but then again, this stuff happens.
Yeah,
but
they want to look. It's like in my honest opinion, Fallout goes more for style than it does for storyline and all that.
It's kind of the same in Star Citizen. It's supposed to take place in like the 28th century, but we got these ships that are more like the kind of ships you can see in Star Wars. When really in the 28th century they'd be more like Borg cubes or something.
Yeah, it's like
But I mean, you even have this problem with so-called futurists.
I mean, that's
where they talk about what
Star Wars is pretty awesome.
But I mean, when they actually talk about what they actually think we're going to have in the future, they tend to overestimate what we're going to have in the next 10 or 20 years, and vastly underestimate what we're going to have after that.
Yep.
Yeah, and we are expecting. I mean, again, a lot of people, like you said, well, what's the hoverboard, what this and that and the other. Yeah. But the reality is, something. I mean, I know it's easy to be saying, but look at what we have right now. Could you imagine 10 years ago us doing something like this? I mean, this Hangout stuff, that should be science fiction, social media, 3D printers, things that are like amazing. These are amazing little, not little, but big things.
We can actually clone organs now.
Yep.
They are actually doing that. That's real.
And that's not science fiction. And, we seem to forget about that stuff.
I'm actually thinking of I'm gonna try to start my own science fiction thriller that kind of deals with politics. And it's one thing that you're probably gonna find funny about it, because my story takes place in the 2050s, where humans are starting to colonize space and all that. and the United States is currently in a state of Cold War with China now. But the thing is, the Republican Party and the Democrat Party don't exist anymore. Now they've merged, and now they're called the National Party for American Progress. Yep. While America is still technically a democracy, it's also a single party state now because it's hard to compete with them. You know.
Yeah.
Which I can imagine happening. You know, I mean, the Democrat and Republican Party are already pretty much the same. You know.
They pretty much are, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Oh, just don't
That
mind
voting
my
would be
cat.
kind of a waste of time.
Yep.
Oh, both
Well,
don't
it
mind
is,
me.
but
Yeah.
Well, kitty just came in the room. Want to
Yeah,
say hi?
And Shane, going back to Fallout, you know, it's another argument that I got that like so many people, you know, that so many Fallout fans hated me for, even though I brought it up with really good, you know, points and economic points, and they still didn't get it. You know what that was? How a bottle cap system wouldn't work in the Fallout world, and they said, well, why wouldn't it? Because it makes sense, you know, it's how humans value it. And I'm like, yeah, but there's nothing to back, you know, the bottle caps up, and not to mention they're way too easy to forge, you know.
yeah, that's what happened in New Vegas.
Yeah, you know. It's like, and people kept saying, no, it's a lot better and all. That's like, look, you know, and that's another thing. For one thing, it's easy to copyright, and again, even if they, you know, like they were for some reason difficult to copy, you know, if it doesn't have any like other thing like gold or silver or whatever to back it up, you know, what's going to stop it from inflating, you know?
As long as it's easy to make, it's not going to really function as money.
Why not just use cryptocurrency?
Yeah. In fact, in a Fallout story that I'm working on, there's actually a group of mercenaries, and they will not take bottle caps. They flat out say, we will not take them. They're a waste of time, you know. They're a waste of time. They only accept, you know, what they call real money, and that's either money that's from, you know, a well-established state, or it's, you know, valuable metals like platinum or whatnot. They will not take bottle caps.
Because it's easier to manufacture. I mean, heck, you could drink the cola thing and get bottle caps. Or
that's actually what their leader says. They say, look, kid, we don't take bottle caps. I can make those things in my basement right now. Real stuff or money. In fact, there's a funny joke. In fact, there's a little in-joke in reference to Star Wars, you know, which says, you know, intelligence, and it says bottle caps will do fine, and it's always going to fail. And he goes, look, I'm not playing that game, kid. That doesn't work on me. Real money or get out.
Yeah. That's actually happened, though, in the real world. You know, a lot of people have talked about the island of Yap. Yappian money is small discs of limestone with a hole cut in the middle, and you have like tiny ones you can hold in your hand that's like pocket change, and then bigger one is worth more amounts. Then you have these really huge, massive ones that's just like really, really rich, and that actually works because there's not any limestone on Yap, so those pieces of limestone that are shaped like that represents the resources needed to go off island and get it, you know, and all the tools to shape it and everything. Well, when the Americans first came there, the American military started just bringing on, because they could get it easily, and they carved it out easily, and it was all neatly carved and everything. And when they cut it on, and then they bring out these massive discs of limestone, the Appians said, like, well, okay, yeah, but it's not worth that much, because you didn't put that many resources into making it. It's easy for you to make it. Yep. So we'll take it, but it's not going to be worth as much as a similar size.
And it's funny because when I was bringing that up to these Fallout fans, you know, people were saying, well, haven't you ever heard of suspension of disbelief? Well, you can only take that to a limit, because here's the thing: Fallout is a role-playing game, and it's trying to get a little serious. You know, I mean, yeah, there's some over-the-top stuff that you got to have a lot of suspension of disbelief, like the aliens and the ray guns, but still, you know, game-wise, it's trying to be a serious thing. Like, how would you survive? What would you do in a wasteland?
And I think you have less of that in a role-playing game than, like, in a movie, you can just kind of go with it. But in a role-playing game, you're actively trying to live in this area and do the things that you would actually do in the area.
Not to mention another problem with like a bottle cap system is like there's no system of value. You know, in Fallout it's mentioned every bottle cap has the same value. What happens if I see this really nice ray gun and the guy wants 2,000 bottle caps for it? You're telling me I gotta hold a big sack of 2,000 bottle caps just to get it? You know?
Yeah, that's the problem right there.
Yeah.
Or you could just use your gun and just blast them away. But
yeah,
but
then the regulators are gonna come after you, and those guys are tough mother effers to fight. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, then again, it's not as bad as say the Resident Evil 4, or like uh, that dude who buys you like, oh, we could come on in, stranger, and have like that whole little you know what I'm talking about, right? Let's see, the salesman in Resident Evil 4 has all these weapons and everything else, and you shoot him in the head or something, you're like, nope, you can't get any of this equipment now. You have to get all the gunny and gold, and have to buy the
Yeah.
next big gun and everything
Yeah.
else. I'm like,
Yep.
really? I'm
Yeah.
like, why?
Yeah,
Why do I?
in fact, there's a similar game to Fallout called Metro, which has a similar setting, and their currency is a bullet, but there's actually a reasoning behind the bullet, and that's because guns are highly valued in the, in the remnants of Moscow, but they're scarce, so often a bullet takes a lot of resources to get, and that's why the bullet's more valuable there.
Well, and if you had like a post-apocalyptic place where everyone had guns, but it was really difficult to make bullets, that's a situation where, yeah, they would be valuable and they
Yep,
would be
you'd
traded
either
quite a bit.
Yep, you would either need to have the tools and the chemistry to make your own bullets, or you'd have to find them from whatever military or police bases are still active.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, that's the problem I have with the bottle cap system. If it's everywhere to the point where it's so common that you can even use them to make like weapons and all that, then why use it as a currency?
Maybe they'll fix that in Fallout 4.
And the problem is that people took the Amazing Atheist thing where they said it's only human value. This object's only valuable because of humans value it. And I'm telling them, well, yeah, there's a bit of truth to that, but what they're forgetting is, why do humans value it? Humans only value something only if it takes effort to get. If it's common, we don't value it as much.
Well, it's about utility.
Yeah,
High
utility
school.
too.
What are you actually going to do with it? That's why I like looking at bees and flowers about this, and it is amazing how statists have tried to talk their way around this. But flowers make nectar. Flowers don't care for nectar. The only reason they make nectar is it attracts bees. Bees use the nectar to make honey. They don't care if the flowers pollinate or not, but by collecting the network, they spread the pollen around. So, I mean, There you go. That's subjective theory of value right there. That's subjective. I'll get to that in a minute. That's subjective theory of value right there, and yet it must be the case that system is objectively beneficial to both species, or else it would never have evolved.
Mm-hmm.
That had to have been beneficial to both survivors. Yeah. And yes, I did have one say, but bees have a queen. Okay, first of all, that's irrelevant to what I was saying. Second of all, I was trying to explain to this guy that the queen bee is just an egg sac. That's what she is. She's there to be fertilized. And no. She telepathically sends out her magical brain waves and doesn't. No, it's bottom-up, spontaneous order. But they have to deny that. Statists just have to deny bottom-up spontaneous order, just like the creationists, or else everything falls apart.
Yep.
Except they're doing it at the same time, both creation, both evolution and free markets.
Yeah, because the creationists would say, well, no, bees and flowers like that because God made it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Speaking of bees and flowers, I saw a movie that really has no understanding about herbology and pollination, and that's a bee movie where all the bees go on strike, and the result is that all the flowers die. And I'm thinking, you do realize that there's other methods on plants can pollinate and all that. Not to mention, here's another fact they forget: plants don't need pollination to reproduce. If an emergency like that does occur and there's no pollinating insects, they can self-clone themselves.
Well, there was actually a very beautiful XKCD comic where he was talking about this one plant, and the plant has a specific configuration of the flowers and leaves or something to mimic an insect so that another insect will come along and try to mate with it and then spread it around. The insect is now extinct. And what's happened is the flower has just gone back to pollinating through wind or whatever, which isn't as reliable, but it still works. But you still have that form there of the bee that no longer exists.
Yep. I've actually heard from it's funny because my friend Jason, his father-in-law is a biochemist, but he does know a thing or two about zoology, and he says now he does say bees are important to the environment, but he jokingly says we need those angry, evil wasps more than we need more than bees. You'd be surprised how beneficial wasps are, especially to farmers. And people ask
I just pasted the link in the chat.
Yeah. And it's like people are like, why? What do wasps do? All they do is get angry and sting. But yeah, they get rid of a lot of the beetles that are destructive to a lot of plants and gardens.
Yeah, even though the wasp is a bit of a dangerous creature, it's necessary. So
Yeah.
it's like spiders. People don't like spiders, but
Yep. Yep. It's actually a funny thing. It's actually called something called the Bambi effect, and all that, because my biology teacher did this. It's like what would you rather save from extinction more, a wasp or a panda? And obviously most people said, "Oh, save those cute little pandas." And he pointed out, "Well, here's the thing. Pandas are cute and all that, but here's the thing. Here's the thing. If pandas were to go extinct, they wouldn't have that much of an environmental impact. If wasps, all the species were to go extinct, there'd be a huge environmental impact. You know, And the Bambi effect is that you only want to save a certain animal because it's cute, and not because
how
of,
it's presented in the media.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
you
know,
know, like how kittens and dogs or anything else
mhm,
are looked at as cute or what
yep,
have you. But with the nasty animals like spiders and you said wasps, they're
yeah,
not looked at very positive.
yeah.
In
It
fact,
kind of reminds me.
even when they're anthropomorphized or what have you, they are with negative traits as well for the most
Oh
part.
yeah, I mean, yeah, and this is coming from a guy who's a furry fan. Yes, I know, furry animals, and cartoons are cute and all that, but I do know that Disney is not that life isn't a Disney movie. If you think that when humans aren't getting involved in nature, that the animals are all singing and laughing and sharing their food together, that's not true. In real life, animals are vicious. They don't care. They don't really care about
It depends on how social they are. I think it was
Yep.
Thunderfoot who pointed out that when you have piranhas that are in that feeding frenzy, they don't eat each other.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you want to know something? Piranhas actually aren't that dangerous. People like to portray piranhas as like these types of guys where the moment meat gets into the water, they'll go into a feeding frenzy. Actually, it really depends on the species of piranha and also what's going on. Now if there's
Well,
already
it
a dead
depends
animal.
on how long it's been since they've last eaten.
Yeah.
If they're in an area where there's plenty of food around, they're not going to
Yep.
go into that
Yeah,
feeding frenzy.
in fact, they're actually going to swim away from you. And as Penn and Teller pointed out, and Penn and Teller tell a lie. The fact of the matter is, piranhas may be vicious little creatures, but they're still small fish, and there are animals in South America that eat them. So that's the reason why they bundle up.
Strength in numbers.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah, that's the whole reason for things like schools of fish, flocks of
Yep.
birds, things like that.
Yep, it's to either scare away the animal, fight back, or in some cases, it's just make the ultimate sacrifice. It's that, yeah, even the hungriest predator can't eat us all, so some of us are going to live on to reproduce, so it doesn't matter. That's a sad truth. Some people, when it comes to terms and numbers, they're just there for cannon fodder, as we put it. That's actually what some
You
people
don't
think.
have to. You don't have to outrun the bear. You just have to outrun the other guy.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
oh yeah, that's a fun. Oh yeah, that's a funny joke that a friend of mine told me. Yep, yeah, it's like two guys are hunting in Siberia when suddenly they accidentally shoot a Siberian tiger, and the tiger's running, chasing them, and finally they're going down a mountain, but they're struggling, and one guy pulls out a pair of skis, and they say, "Look, a Siberian tiger can run very fast, and I don't think those skis are going to help." And his friend says, "Hey, it's not a matter of outrunning the tiger; it's a matter of outrunning you." Yeah.
That's how, it's even that way in like the world of
Yep.
computer security, because
Yep.
when you install your updates and you do all the stuff to secure your computer, all you're really wanting to do is making yourself more secure than a lot of the other computers out there, so that they'll get hacked into and they'll become part of the botnets and they'll leave you alone.
Yep. And here's another funny thing that I actually tried to tell a friend, but he didn't get it. I was watching the movie King Kong, and I actually brought up a pretty good point that said the girl, in the original King Kong movie, the girl would have been much safer had the T-Rex won the fight than with King Kong. And people say, why? The T-Rex would have eaten her. And it's like, why would he want to eat her and waste more energy when he's got this dead monkey he can feast on?
There you go.
So
yeah.
while he's eating, she can slip away and possibly get help from other people. Whereas she almost died in the hands of Kong because he kept taking her to all these dangerous situations. Now, yeah, we know what happened. She was safe, but let's think about, like, let's say King Kong wasn't real, and you didn't know what was going to happen.
It would be like giving up this nice big steak dinner to go chase down a jelly bean or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that's why in all honesty, when people like to portray the T-Rex as like it would chase after a human, and when in reality, I think a T-Rex, like if they did exist with humans, it would really be a mixed reaction depending on the scenario. Like if it's in neutral territory and we assume the T-Rex is had enough to eat, if it saw a human, it would probably look at us with curiosity, but then it would move on because why waste energy chasing after something that's a light snack, you know?
So basically, you're saying humanity would have a shot if Rhinosaurs and
Well, yeah,
were so.
yeah. In all honesty,
That's actually, they say, is how the mammals survived the age of the dinosaurs. Was one, they could burrow underground, and the other, they just weren't that big, and so most of the dinosaurs just went past them.
yeah, yeah. In all honesty, I could see the T-Rex attacking a person only for one of two reasons. Either one, the T-Rex is famished, it hasn't eaten for several weeks, and it'll eat anything by then, and it's desperate. Or two, you're stumbling on its territory. Like, you come across its nest, and it's like, oh no, that's my turf, get off, like that. In fact, in the original Jurassic Park movie, that's kind of implied why the T-Rexes are attacking. They're not attacking because they're these mindless monsters. They're attacking because the humans are, in their minds, they're on their turf, and they want them off.
Yeah.
In fact, in the famous Jeep chase scene, it's clearly shown that once they reach a distance away from the T-Rex pen, the T-Rex backs off because it understands, okay, they're out of the territory. I can go back to hunting now.
Yeah, that's what it is. And
Yeah, that's
also
that's how,
kind of what happened in the second movie.
Yep. Oh yeah.
They took the kid, and
Yep.
Yeah, that was really, really, really stupid.
Yep. And then but then JP3 came along and they ruined it, and then they made Spinosaurus, portrayed as this giant monster. Because here's the thing: yes, I know Spinosaurus was bigger than T-Rex, but here's the thing: most paleontologists think that Spinosaurus in real life was a wuss. It didn't have very strong jaws. It wasn't very flexible. It was literally basically an overgrown alligator.
yeah.
And
Alligators you don't want to mess with either. My brother actually says, I don't want to, like, he told me, I asked him, like, oh, would you go to Jurassic World? Like, no, I wouldn't go there. That was a real place. Because you know what? No, I don't want to go to that. They don't want to deal with that stuff. Since the only dinosaurs that survive were the alligators, the crocodiles, that's it. And
the Lost World Jurassic Park. I like it, even though it's kind of got a stupid message and all that. It's like the dinosaur should be left free. I like how the Nostalgia Critic reviewed it, and he was criticizing Nick Van Owen, going, you just came here to loot the place. And the Nostalgia Critic's like, what are they doing? All they're gonna do is take the dinosaurs and put them in a zoo. They're not gonna kill them.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like think about what happened when they brought pigs and rabbits to Australia. Now imagine taking a species that extinct for 65 million years, letting them run around free. What do you imagine is going to happen to the ecology then?
Yeah, at least if the dinosaurs are in a zoo, they can be controlled, so they don't, overpopulate and run amok,
Although I thought the whole point of Jurassic Park was they couldn't be controlled.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Well,
and honestly, Vince Vaughn acting like a complete prick.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you actually really think about it, Vince Vaughn's character is responsible for the San Diego incident. Why? Because here's the thing, Roland's intention was to kill a T-Rex, not trank it. But here's the thing, he sabotaged his gun, so he couldn't kill the T-Rex, so he had to trank it. And Engine in turn brought it back to San Diego.
Yeah, and then having how many death and destruction.
Yeah,
Vince Vaughn's on our side now.
Yeah, and it's funny because in reality, Vince Vaughn is the exact opposite of his character in that movie. He's the exact opposite.
Yeah, I remember everybody going all crazy, like, "Oh my gosh, he's under the guns." I'm like, "Did you not listen to everything else he said?" And honestly, and no one's really wanted. I mean, that's the thing I just don't understand.
Yeah.
About how. Going back to the whole, the war drugs, most people in this country. And the funny thing is, I remember this is a statement from, I should have told you this, I should have put this in the Skype chat. Who's the New Jersey governor? Chris Christie. He says this, the most baffling thing I've ever heard someone say about the war drugs. He says, no, I don't know. He says, quote, nope, I don't want the people Colorado probably don't want the war on drugs, even though the marijuana legalized, even though the majority of people voted for that. He said he would legalize it and charge people, saying we don't want this country and everything else. It doesn't work. But yet, in the later parts of this interview, he says the war on drugs have be treated as not done well. In fact, he said it failed. I'm like, wait a minute. You just said this. You would arrest people for marijuana and yet
It's called
you're,
politics and pandering.
Yep. I don't
and
get.
then he says,
It's called he's taking his cues from Rand Paul.
"Oh
Yeah.
goodness gracious."
I don't get Hollywood on half the time. They're so weird, you know. I mean, it's like,
Yeah, but I just don't understand.
Hollywood actually made a video that celebrated, you know, a radical terrorist group that went in America called, you know, the Weather Underground. You know, you've heard of those guys?
Hmm.
In the 1960s, they were like this radical communist group that went around, you know, planting bombs, you know, and everywhere. And in this movie called The Country You Keep, they were celebrated as freedom fighters. And it's like, most of the people they attacked were innocent people who had nothing to do with Vietnam and all that, you know. You know, and I even like how one person approached them and said, "Well, what's next? Are you gonna do a movie about Timothy McVeigh?" You know, and I actually brought that up, and you know what people, supporters of the movie said? They said, "Well, that's different." It's like,
Yeah, because his politics don't agree with theirs.
yeah, you know, and that's
Yeah,
funny
that's-
because me being a libertarian and all that, you know, I was accused of you know, some people have said, "Oh, so you're like Timothy McVeigh." It's like, look, Timothy McVeigh was not a libertarian. I mean, yeah, he held, you know, some principles and all, but here's the thing: he was not a libertarian. He was some crazed maniac, you know.
He
Who-
violated the NAP in a pretty damn big way.
and
Yeah,
killed multiple people, innocent people,
Yeah.
young children, and everything else. For what political purpose? I have no idea what's for. It just makes no
Yeah.
daggone sense.
and it's funny about it's funny about Timothy McVeigh because gun nuts like to say, well, if we get rid of guns, you know, there'll be fewer crimes. And I like how one person posted this picture that said in 1996, Timothy McVeigh killed over 100 people and seriously injured 600 more. We can still buy nitro fuel, we can still rent trucks, and we can still buy high octane fertilizer.
But
Yep.
we need sane gun laws, like in Canada,
Yeah.
because guns are the same thing to say is guns are evil, and if we get rid of them, everything will be good.
Yeah, you
That's
know,
the
it's-
same.
That's
thing to do.
that's the and again, these are the
Same.
same people who think the war on drugs is fair. Like, well, the government can't do anything in the war on drugs. It's
Yeah.
stupid. But yet they think that let's
Oh,
do
yeah.
the-
Don't get me started on those Hollywood hypocrites, you know, that want the war on drugs to end, but then you're saying we should ban guns. You know, I would like to tell them that. You know, it's like, okay, so you support ending the war on drugs, right? And it's like, well, yeah. Why do you think we should end the war on drugs? I'd say because it's bad, you know, and it's the reason why we have all these black markets. And I'm like, but you're also against guns. Yeah, so you're assuming that if we legalize drugs, it's going to be all but for some reason guns are just different. You know, and I've heard people say that. They say, well, guns are different, you know, and all that, you know.
Guns kill people.
So do drugs, you know.
Yeah, because special pleading.
Yep. It's like, it's like you said, atheism and libertarianism.
So can cars.
Yep. It's it's unwrong. It's completely wrong and harmful, unless it's something that I agree with. You know.
Yeah. You know how many people die in car accidents? Like
Yeah.
around 40, 50,000 people die.
Yeah.
More people that die from those than guns and such.
Yeah.
But no one wants to talk about these. Again, that's why, you know, I
But
do
there's lower
understand-
gun crime in Britain, even though
The
there's probably
the difference is cars aren't built to kill people because intentions matter.
Yeah. Yeah. And here's
Even
another
though
thing.
that
Saying
probably
that
kill
guns,
more
saying
people.
that guns are built to kill people is a little stupid because, like, here's what I want to ask. You know, what about the guns that aren't made for killing people but are made for hunting purposes? Well, they're built to kill, but they're not built to kill people. You know, this is what I tell people: guns are mechanical devices. They don't have a brain to commit murder. The reason why when a bad guy takes a gun, pulls the trigger, and fires it at someone, it's not, you know, evil that's causing the gun to do that. It's just basic chemistry and mechanics. You know. All the gun's doing is just doing what it was designed to do. The real thing you should look at is the person behind the gun. You know, it's...
But saying
They do.
Yeah.
What they do when it's a cop, it's good, and when it's anyone else,
Yeah.
it's bad.
You know, saying guns, here's something else, you know, I mean, if you're going to blame the object, you might as well ban steel because steel has been used for many years to make weapons, so we should say, so we can't use steel anymore because steel can be used to make weapons and all. That's that mentality, you know. And that's kind of like, you know, going back to that minimum wage thing, you know, it's like how people, you know, like to keep it small so it gets lost in the mess, you know. I mean, people say we gotta, you know, declare peace by banning weapons, so I say, so you're saying we should ban steel so people can't make weapons out of steel, and they'll be like, well, no, that's crazy because we need steel and all. It's like with minimum wage, you know, when they say we need more wage, and you say, oh, so you want to raise it to 15, why not $50 an hour? They go, well, that's too much, you know, it's like,
It's
Well,
a
make it.
legal
Well, you don't need a
principle.
gun to protect yourself. You can just call
Yeah.
the police and wait an hour for them to come.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
It's a legal
6 hours
principle.
later, the police come.
yeah.
It's a legal principle that's gotten completely turned on its head. The way it's supposed to work is that if there is a reasonable legal use for something like a gun, target practice, defending yourself, or whatever, then you're supposed to allow it. And yet that's been turned around to say that if it can be used, as an object of aggression, and it's just like what we see with the Pirate Bay. We've talked about this before. Lots of legal content on the Pirate Bay. I have legal content of my own on the Pirate Bay, but because it's being used in this other way, we have to ban the whole thing. It doesn't matter that there is a completely legally valid, non-infringing use for it. Doesn't matter.
Again, these people want the old way. They like the old way. They want the old way, the old systems, because that's where they made the most money.
Yep.
They made the
Oh,
most
and here's
money.
Here's another argument that makes me laugh is when some people say, yeah, but the Second Amendment only applied to muskets and all that. It's like, okay, again, we have to take a look at, like, as Shane pointed out, what the original words were, what the original words meant. Now, I understand it was written during a time when an arm were the most advanced weapon on the planet, was a cannon or a musket. But here's the thing: they didn't say the right to own black powder muskets or something. They said the right to keep and bear arms, and that means anything, whether it be a musket, a sword, or just a brick, or just a golf, or just a club, whatever they used.
Or
also, if the Second Amendment only applies to muskets, then the First Amendment freedom of speech only applies to things you print out on a printing press. I've actually seen people, justify, censoring things like the internet for that. People like to bring up, what about, the First Amendment? And they said the First Amendment only applies to newspapers and the press. It doesn't apply to the internet or personal life. It's like
it doesn't apply to money either. Let's overturn that. What was that court decision?
Yep.
Citizens United.
Citizens United. Yeah, we need to overturn Citizens United. Bernie Sanders is making it.
But yeah, it's funny because no one wants to talk about the stuff that happened before that, the money in politics before. They just say, "Oh, Citizens United destroyed everything." No, it didn't, and it didn't even come closer because they were. I remember hearing stories about corrupt stuff, politicians and everything else before Citizens United.
Bush was around before Citizens United.
And it's funny about about politics and all, because I do a lot of history as a little hobby, and I actually laugh when people mock Americans for being hypocritical, for talking about how come you're not supporting our communist revolution that you got there through a revolution. And I'm just laughing, saying, because in all honesty, when you study history in the past 300 years, the American Revolution so far, at least in the short term, was the only revolution that resulted in a stabilized government that actually worked, whereas all the other ones either failed or they ended up with a government that was worse than the predecessor.
Yeah. And,
I actually wrote a funny thing for my comic strip, where they're discussing where they're doing a play for Les Miserables and all that, now Les Miserables doesn't take place in the 1812s, but it was mocking, the French Revolution, and his one girl, who's this ultra, radical leftist, goes, the French Revolution was the first time where the proletariat roll up against the bourgeoisie, while kings, vive la France! And then her friend points out, didn't the French Revolution destroy France's status as a superpower and cause the rise of the Napoleonic dictatorship? And then,
pretty much.
And then she replies, you're a real buzzkill sometimes.
The truth hurts. And
because they bring in this reality stuff, and it just messes with everyone's nice illusions.
And people like to compare that. Why did the American Revolution, work, whereas the French Revolution ended up with a worse government? And I think the reason is because the guys who were doing it, they kind of had some understanding of what they were going to do. They kind of knew that, look, we want the British out, but at the same time, we don't know for sure that we're going to do. So let's just, negotiate, experiment, and see what works and what doesn't. Whereas the French Revolution,
they were actually basing everything they did on the ideals of the Enlightenment. And so they basically had an understanding of what it was they were fighting for and what it was they were going to set it up.
Whereas with the French Revolution, the problem was that it was led by so many groups. It was led by anti-monarchists, socialists, communists, anarchists. There were all these groups, and when they finally overthrew the revolution, it was kind of like, it was kind of like, that situation where, like, where, like, you do something really great and they're like, okay, now what do we do? They didn't have a long-term plan. All they wanted was to get rid of the king, but they never sat down to actually talk, okay, what's going to happen after France? And the result is that the French Republic was all disoriented. They were confused. They had no idea what to do. They were losing, money and territory. And when the British came alongside, a Corsican general came along and said, here, if you give me dictatorial powers, I'll kick the British out of the country. And that man was Corsican was Napoleon.
Yep.
Yep.
He was a man who actually, funny enough, actually did he did knew about the whole the Revolutionary Army. In fact, he did like General George Washington. I think yeah. And the funny thing is, I love learning about the history about American Revolution is that if there was like a certain other ways and everything else, the revolution would have ended just like that. I mean, after the big battle in New York where they had to escape, if that fog didn't come down and George Washington was captured, boom.
And here's another funny thing, little bit of reality that I actually pointed out to one of my friends who's a diehard communist is that they were talking about all the benefits of the Russian Revolution, and they talked about how, but the Russian Revolution got Russia out of World War I that was causing big happenings on the economy. I'm like, well, yeah, but here's the thing: if Russia never got involved in World War I, there never would have been a Russian Revolution. Now, wouldn't have there been? Because here's the thing: there had been previous attempts by communists to overthrow the government, all of which were crushed, and one of the reasons was because they occurred during times when things in Russia were relatively peaceful and they had no fuel. There was nothing to fuel the fire. Whereas in 1917 the Bolsheviks said if you support us and join our fight, we'll end the war, and that's all they needed. Whereas the 1905 revolution, there wasn't really anything they could do. It was they were holding guns saying let's launch a proletarian revolution, and the proletarian were going why? I mean, it's not perfect, but things are okay.
They got their stuff. They're like, okay, we're fine.
Yeah,
it's better than working on the farms.
Yep. And another reason why World War I also stopped the Russian Revolution wasn't just because why World War I did more to end communism wasn't just because of that, but also also World War I is the reason why communism never spread much outside of Russia, because the funny thing is that the communists were going around telling workers all over the world you should take up arms and launch a workers rebellion against the bourgeoisie. But here's the thing: they had just fought a catastrophic global war, and now there's these people saying let's start another war. It's like no thanks. I'd rather live in whatever crap country I live in than go through that again.
I know, and even worse, and about the people who look at the hardcore communists, and if y'all want, I just want someone to explain this to me: is that how could you look at what's going on in China? Back in there in China and in Russia, see those huge people, around 90 million there total of death and destruction, and say, well, that wasn't really communism.
It's like,
I mean, can't you at least say, well, if you are this way, at least realize there are some problems, at least admit there are problems?
And here's another thing was that I was talking about this one guy, and I was talking about how I was a supporter of Milton Friedman and free markets, and he said, oh, then you must support Augusto Pinochet because he read Milton Friedman, and I'm like, you obviously did not study what Augusto Pinochet did in Chile. I mean, yeah, he read Friedman, he was an admirer, but he wasn't a full blown Freemanite or whatever you want to call him. I mean, here's the thing. You want to know why the Chilean economy crashed? Because guess what Pinochet did? Did he let the economy run wild? No, he thought that in order to increase the value of the Chilean money, he interfered and he pegged the value so it would go with the U.S. dollar.
Yeah, just like Argentina, then it worked about as well as it did.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason why we can make the argument that he wasn't a true libertarian free marketer, because in order to be a libertarian free market, you have to believe in total hands off, and you can't use the initiation of force. If you go around arresting people who disagree with you, and even introducing even just slight regulations in the market, you violated that principle.
Yeah.
That was actually one way that the Great Depression in the U.S. got exported to other countries, because Britain pegged the value of the pound to the value of the dollar.
Yep. So when the dollar crashed, and it's And it's pretty funny because according to some people who interviewed, who were, part of, the quote-unquote Chicago Boys, while Pinochet was an admirer of Milton Friedman, he didn't carry out all of his ideas. In fact, Milton Friedman actually criticized Pinochet. That's what they forget about. Yeah, Milton Friedman visited Pinochet and he gave lectures there, but he also criticized him. There was even an interview with a former Chilean economic advisor saying that one time Milton Friedman came up to them and they were saying, so what do you like Chile so far? And he said, well, I do like how you're trying to turn, Chile into a free marketplace, but could you stop, oppressing so many people? And he said, well, I don't think the president's going to like that. And he says, well, that's his problem, not mine. Basically.
Yeah. Anyway, Shane,
Yeah,
I
he
have
has
to
a lot of criticism anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
Shane, I have to. I gotta cook dinner and everything, and make sure my
Alright.
little cat had to go to the vet and everything. So.
Yeah, we got like 15 minutes left if we want to use them. I guess we could sign off early if we wanted to.
All right. Again, hopefully I didn't bore you. All right, man. See y'all later.
And we'll see you for the podcast this week.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, it's going to be a while before I can join a podcast because my BitTorrent got shut down. Yeah.
Your BitTorrent got shut down?
Yeah, my computer got attacked by an Acheon, and that's what I call Trojans, by the way. I call them Acheons, or however you pronounce them. Yeah. That's a little off track, but that's actually what people fail to forget. It wasn't the Trojans that made the horse; it was the Acheons. Yeah, but anyway, it got attacked, so we took it to a computer guy, and he got rid of my BitTorrent because he said it was too open. So, yeah.
It was too open,
or something like he said it made it easier for people to see my information and all that.
No, BitTorrent does not do that.
Yeah, even though I told him, you only see information that I let you see, that we let each other see. It's only, person to person,
Yeah.
and whatnot. So I don't know what happened. Yeah.
Now, there's just so much misinformation going around about that. It's like, well, because the way it used to be, like with LimeWire or something, you could just kind of like walk in and just look through someone's directories and pick files you want, and that's not how BitTorrent works. BitTorrent is just a file transfer protocol. Yeah. That's all it is.
Yeah. Not to mention, my mom said, you got to watch out, for Norton and all that. Well, my Norton said BitTorrent was safe. All my antivirus stuff said Norton. BitTorrent was safe. It had a solid reputation. So I think what really caused me to get it was when I was downloading something off of Pirate Bay and I didn't thoroughly scan it. So, not saying Pirate Bay is useless. It's just that you got to be careful on it. Make sure you thoroughly scan everything before you download it, or else you're going to get a Trojan.
And you gotta be careful because now that they're playing whack-a-mole with this, like they'll take down a BitTorrent site, like this happened with EasyTV. They took down easytv.it and they moved to easytv.ch or something like that. But someone else grabbed easytv.it, put a whole bunch of malware on it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and they made it look like EasyTV, but it was
Ironically, the same thing happened when the government tried to launch its universal healthcare program. They had the national list, but there's just one problem. They forgot to register the name healthcare.gov or whatnot. So there were all these people building their websites, and people go there thinking they're going to get free healthcare, but it turns out it's just some fisher trying to get your social security number so he can make a credit card in your name.
They were getting healthcare.com or healthcare.net or whatever.
So they had to, and not to mention the website that was finally created, that was belonging to the government. It was made by a shoddy website company in Canada that had a reputation of being not very reliable, but they hired them anyway. Yeah. Yeah, there was actually a special law about that where they interviewed a Canadian guy, and he said, "Oh yeah, in Canada, we have a reputation with the company because the same company that registered, helped with the United States create the healthcare.gov, whatever it's called. They also worked with Canada's national healthcare system, and the result was that their healthcare got mismanaged to the point that some people actually lost their insurance plans."
Oh, and Canada had actually fired them, and I think fined them a whole bunch of money even before the Obama administration had hired them to do that. And it was like, do you not look at the background of the people you're hiring?
It's... Yeah, well, but then again, this is the same government that hired a guy, who had a history of violence and mental delusions, gave him a security pass so he was allowed to go onto a naval base. Yeah, it's funny. People were blaming guns and all that, and I'm like, well, people we really should blaming is lack of, of background checks, because this guy, before getting hired there, had complained constantly to his therapist. I'm hearing these voices. They're telling me to kill. They're telling me I'm possessed by a demon and I gotta kill and go on a rampage. I need help, and no one helped him, and they didn't. But they still registered, and they didn't look into that. You know, if you're not going to analyze your own people, then why should we trust you?
All right, we should probably start winding this down. I'd
Yep.
like to kind of go quickly just to kind of give you a little preview over what Charles and I are going to be talking about on the podcast coming up. I wasn't going to cover this because this was just like, oh, yet another hacking thing. There was like 4 million federal employees' information got hacked. But there's something about it that makes it really, 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 really stupid, and means that when the feds talk about, oh, we want you to have we want to have an encryption key of everything you do, you should run away screaming. There was something really stupid that they did that we'll talk about. We'll also talk about another little piece of fallout from the Silk Road trial. If you were online and you were posting comments to a certain place and you might have said some bad things about the judge in Silk Road, you might be getting a subpoena. We'll talk about that.
Silk Road, that sounds familiar. What's that again?
That was the Darknet marketplace where it was an e-commerce site, and of course, since it was on the Darknet, people were buying and selling drugs or whatever. But they just had the big trial.
That's right. That's right. Their founder recently got a life sentence for that. Yeah. So.
We'll also talk about, apparently, according to the government, clearing your browser history is a felony.
Wow.
And we'll talk about what that's going on. And, of course, we'll have Biggest Bogon Emitter and Idiot Extraordinaire. I would tell you who they are, but it'd probably give too much away, so.
Oh. Well, it's not going to be obvious. Like, so when we're, like, it's not going to be like a person where, like, after we hear them, it's like, oh, come on, we saw that coming,
I think Idiot Extraordinaire you probably see coming.
Well, yeah, because there's a lot of repeat offenders on Idiot Extraordinaire, Yep.
Yeah, and things that get talked about quite a lot. But,
yeah.
I normally try to avoid the stuff everyone else is talking about, but when you're this idiotic,
yeah, like Saloon got Idiot or Biggest Bogon Emitter quite plenty of times, and we try to avoid. You said you try to avoid that, but you can't help it when Saloon keeps posting all these really.
Are you saying Saloon or Salon?
Yep.
He means salon, but he says saloon just to be just to be insulting.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that's just how I pronounce it. I'm from Wisconsin. We pronounce words differently. Yeah.
Wisconsin.
Yeah. Well, not like that. Here's another thing. Here's another thing. You want to know what we call water fountains in Wisconsin?
What?
We call them bubblers. I don't know why. I don't call them that, but that's what everyone else does.
If your water is bubbling, you probably shouldn't drink it.
You probably fill it because it's probably natural gas.
yeah, that's funny.
See if it lights on fire. That's.
Yeah, that's funny. It's like, if you excuse me, I gotta drink some water. This water tastes funny. Yeah, this doesn't taste like water. This tastes like water that's filled with sulfuric acid. Yeah.
Not a good sign.
Yeah.
Not a good sign.
Yeah.
Okay, and after that, there probably won't be a lot of content coming out on this channel for the next couple of weeks because on Monday, I'm getting married.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah, and I'll probably be like around posting comments. For like a few days after that, but then of course we're going on our honeymoon, and so basically once I come back from that and recover from that, then but for the next couple of weeks, don't expect a whole lot.
Also, so who's the new gal's name?
Heather.
Yeah, Shannon, I gotta go.
What was your first wife's name?
All right, we'll see you,
again?
Jacob. Thanks for showing up.
Yeah,
what was that, Chris?
What was your first wife's name again? I remember you were married before, but then tragedy struck and all that.
Okay, well, my first wife and the mother of my children is Sharon. We're divorced, and then there was Joey. Joey was the one who was killed by the drunk driver.
Oh, yeah,
so
that's sad.
This is the third marriage for both of us, so hopefully we both got it right this time. Neither one of us want to have to go through this again, so we're hoping this is
hopefully
the one that's going to.
Oh, yeah.
All right, well, anything else before we sign off?
Nope. But it's funny you mentioned drunk drivers, but I almost got into a car accident because of an impatient driver. Yeah, yesterday I was going to get some ice cream and I had to turn left, but it was busy down there, and there was this guy who just kept honking his horn and actually kind of tried to push me aside. And I'm
Yeah.
like, buddy, you want to start this? That's really going to inconvenience you, because now not only am I going to probably be obstructing the road, but because you're probably an eyewitness, the police are going to need you to stay on site, on
Yeah.
site, so now, it's like, so now you're there talking to your boss, why you're late for work. And it's like, okay, so you were so desperate to get to work that you caused a full-scale car accident. You didn't think that through, did
Yeah.
you? Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, yep, I got to go.
All right. Thanks so much. And
Okay.
again, thank you for joining us on this Hangout. And if you didn't join us and watched it later, thanks for watching, and we'll see y'all later.